Welcome to the Veterans Cafe Podcast, Episode 12. Welcome to finally another episode of the Veterans Cafe Podcast. I'm Wes.
I'm Tracy, and I still love this intro, by the way. Wes hates it, but I still love it.
I do hate it. But first of all, of course, let us apologize for taking literally it's been like a quarter of a year, I think, since we've done one of these.
We've been like inexcusably busy, though. We really have. In our defense, we've been really busy. So
yeah, it's been a bit crazy. We've hardly even found ourselves in the same home much for the past couple of months. So it's made it pretty difficult for us to be able to consistently do anything much. I think we've actually given it a shot, and it ended up being terrible last time we tried it.
And our intention was never to produce anything that was like poor quality. So that one attempt that we did make, we just both listened to it after, and we thought, oh, it's just not good.
Yeah, and so what it really took for us to actually get back on top of this thing was for one of our friends to reach out and be like, hey, are you guys still using that podcast equipment? If not, I think I'll buy it from you.
I know.
So that's pretty much when we were like, okay, man, we need to really get back on top of this. So
and obviously, and Wes, I shouldn't say obviously, but Wes does want to upgrade our sound. So actually we have a better quality sound. But we've been busy, so, we've obviously been too busy to do the podcast, so we've obviously been too busy to, like, upgrade our equipment. And when our friend reached out and was like, hey, are you selling your equipment? We were like, okay, we need to get, like, back on it. So we apologize, and we're here.
Yeah, definitely. So, again, we apologize for taking so long to get back to this, And what's funny about it is it's been so long since we've done one, we actually had a little time to actually discuss the direction we really wanted to take it anyways. And we wanted it to be a little bit less stringent.
Instructional.
A little less narrow. I'm a little more just kind of freestyling and having more of a conversation with you guys.
Which is how the idea originally started, right?
It was. But, I mean, it doesn't mean that we don't want to be helpful in areas that we can be helpful in. It's just that, we didn't want to make it sound like some kind of lecture or some kind of college class. We'd rather just have fun with it and talk to you guys like you're soldiers instead of trying to make some kind of PG instructional tutorial on how to live your life as a veteran or something. So,
but we still want to help veterans in every way possible.
Of course, that's still a possibility. If you need to reach out to us about anything we've talked about in the past, or anything that you may have questions about, we'll still, of course, help you with that. And it's not that we won't talk about that kind of stuff going forward in the podcast, but it's just not something that we're going to focus on completely. We'd rather just talk about what the hell's going on in the world right now.
Oh my
and how
gosh.
Screwed up it is. So,
and there's so much that has happened since we've been away. I mean, your friend Noah, for one, he finished Dancing with the Stars, which was amazing. I'm sure everyone has seen that by now. And if you're not following him on Twitter, you really should. And, and he got engaged, which is so awesome. But I mean, aside from that, which we talked about the last episode, there's just so many things that have happened. I don't even know where to start with the news. I mean, like Texas, there's like open carry now, which, we're both from Texas, so we're like, woo! But I mean, gosh, there's so many things in the news.
I haven't actually read enough about the law whatever it is that's happening, because it all had to do with the Marines, right? The 4 Marines that were recently killed in the recruiting station.
That was Chattanooga.
Right, but I mean that was the response. It was a response to that.
No. Texas Carry was before that. You're thinking of the National Guard. The National Guard.
Oh,
changed.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. Oh, okay. I just got confused about what you were talking about.
I'm the wife. I'm always
right.
But
Texas. Oh my God.
See, some things have not changed.
Welcome back to our marriage. So, anyways, I didn't realize you were talking about that, but yeah, the Texas open carry thing is. But that was like a given. It was just going to happen anyways.
Yeah.
I was talking about the response to the shooting at the recruiting center, where they're actually going to have their National Guardsmen start carrying again on their bases.
When they're on duty, which I think is amazing.
And, yeah, they should be.
You and I had this conversation not that long ago. Obviously, I've only been in the Army, just over 6 years. So I didn't realize. Remember we were talking about this the other day, and I was like, it always made sense to me that if you were qualified to fire a weapon and you were on duty in any branch of the military, it never made sense to me why you couldn't have a weapon. And I didn't realize that was that way at one time.
It's always been stupid ever since the 70s when Jimmy Carter stopped soldiers from carrying weapons on post while they're on duty. Ever since that happened, because of that, I remember even when I was at Fort Campbell, if you owned a weapon, if you had a personal weapon, a handgun or a rifle, you had to keep it in the arms room. You couldn't keep it in your barracks. What the fuck is that? It's our job to carry these weapons and learn how to shoot them properly, you know?
No, I agree. That never made any sense to me whatsoever.
It still doesn't make any sense, and the federal government still hasn't talked about changing their position on it. The only people that have talked about it are states, which is why the state of Texas has talked about allowing National Guardsmen to be able to carry weapons around on base, which is the way it should be. I mean,
I agree.
You know,
and aside from that, which of course I agree with, aside from that though, it's interesting to me. I mean, I'm sure I've talked about this before. I know to you as like my husband in conversation, but I'm not sure if we mentioned this in a podcast before. Before I joined the Army, I had a completely different picture of what the Army was like. And it was very shocking to me to join the Army. I finished basic in 2009. So it was shocking for me to realize that because of budget constraints, we don't always have ammo every year to qualify. And that's pretty horrifying to me because as a soldier, regardless of whether I'm combat camera or I still have my second MOS, of a 12 Romeo interior electrician, I still should know how to fire. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because just recently we came back from Fort Bragg and I had a really hard time zeroing. It's because I hadn't had a weapon in my hand for like 2 to 3 years. And it's just appalling to me. I mean, I understand that the government, wants to save money for various reasons and whatever their agenda is, I want to say that they're true and valid, but I don't know.
And it's not even just the government as a whole, though. I mean, look, everybody knows that the Defense Department has a huge budget to begin with, and that's where all the cuts are coming from, right? So the Defense Department gets their budget cut, and then they have to figure out ways to make these cuts. And of course, our Army has to stay on the cutting edge of technology. We have to continue to do research and development. We have to continue to have the best equipment and technology that's out there. That's what makes us the most relevant military force in the world, but that doesn't mean that training should be sacrificed in other areas. Honestly, as much as it pains me to say a bit, the cutting down of the amount of soldiers in the services is better than cutting away at our technology research and development and other types of training. The problem for me is that in the military and in all the services, really, because what's happening everywhere, is that so much money is being contributed to all of this administrative, horrible training that's happening right now. All of these ridiculous online classes that you're having to do, the PowerPoints. How many PowerPoint classes do you have to participate in every month, every 3 months, every 6 months, or annually to be able to meet the... I actually read an article not too long ago. I can't remember the guy's name. He's an officer. He teaches at West Point, and he was talking about. I think the article was about honesty in the military, and what he was talking about was he was saying that we've come to a point in the military where it is so incredibly difficult for officers to comply with the requirements that the military is handing down to them that they're just basically fudging the numbers. They're just lying. Whenever they get this checklist that says, has your company completed all of these ridiculous courses, all of this ridiculous training? Have they completed it? Well, these commanders are just going through and just checking boxes saying, yep, no problem. Got it done. And of course they haven't, because it's ridiculous. The amount of compliance that is required of these commanders is not obtainable. So at this point, and that's money. All of that time, The time spent doing that training is money. The time spent researching and developing that training is money. And it's all just being thrown away.
No, I agree. I mean, I've been traveling a lot, and hopefully, right? Fingers crossed, I have more traveling next year that's more significant. But as a result of the possible training, I had to spend, 3.5 days going through online classes. I went through SEER and AT1, and then I went ahead and knocked out my SSD1. And anyway, I spent, 3.5 days of my own personal time because, as everybody knows by now, I'm a reservist. So I spent 3.5 days of my own personal time going through all this training. And I would like to say that I learned quite a bit, but a lot of it was like repetitive and a lot of it was unnecessary. And it just hurts my heart because I feel like as a reservist, I could have spent 3.5 days doing something more significant to help the Army and just to help the world in general more than I spent for the last 3.5 days. And as you know, as my husband, I was miserable, right? Every day.
I know. And I had to... That's right. And I had to deal with the fallout of that nuclear situation.
So
I
had the puppies did too.
The three of us had to endure that nuclear winter that happened in our apartment.
But I got it all done.
Yeah, you did.
I got all my little certificates printed.
It's true though. It's most of it is such repetitive, just constant, the same thing being said over and over, or it's a ton of information that's irrelevant. So
I'm never going to
everything that you actually need to know can be taught in 10 minutes, but they spend an hour and a half explaining it. I mean, it's so amazingly ridiculous.
But it's not even that. It's also on a software program that I have to jump through all these hoops to get my updated computer in 2015 to be able to load the program that was created in 1972?
No kidding. I'm not even kidding right now. We have a laptop that I bought for my wife when she first started doing photography. We bought this laptop
2011?
back in I think 2011, something like that. And we have this old crusty laptop. So I took this thing to Afghanistan thinking, oh well, this is our kind of old piece of shit. I'll just take that with us. That way I don't mess up anything that we actually like.
In Samsung, it's badass, by the way.
It is a nice laptop. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it was amazing for its time. But we keep that around now so that we can still actually get on to Army websites. Because that's the only way we can do it. We both have two incredible machines sitting on our desk right now that we are using to record this podcast.
Yeah.
And they cannot get on these websites. Why? Because the technology is too new for us to make it happen.
And you can only downgrade Java so much, which everybody who's currently in the Army right now realizes. You can only take Java down so much. You can only take...
No, actually, unless you are incredibly technically savvy, you can't downgrade Java. That's the problem.
That's my point. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, Java does not allow you to install an older version, which is basically the military is not keeping up with this technology as it's coming out, which is coming out on a weekly basis because, you know why? This is 2015. Technology is continuing to change, and the Army is still sitting there talking about Civil War strategy. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, these systems obviously can't be that secure if they're using such old technology.
Oh, I know. And then the Army was recently hacked. Gosh, there's been so many things that have happened, since you and I have done our last podcast. I don't even know where to start. I mean, we talked about Chattanooga. We talked about the hackings. We talked about, we didn't talk about, we mentioned. Oh my God, and last night, Lafayette, there was I still don't know who this person is other than his name yet of why he shot, in the theater. I don't know, there's just so many things going on. Donald Trump, poor guy.
Poor guy. Oh, don't even. This is an area where we will not find agreement. I'm going to tell you that right now. Poor guy, my ass.
I'm just saying, there's just been so many things that have happened. I don't even know where to start.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the old guy that did the theater thing, which is a horrible thing, and of course we send our thoughts out to the families and everything. But from what it sounds like, he was just it's an issue of psychopathy. That's all it was. He was just some psycho who did something incredibly horrible. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's basically what it boils down to today. Is it's either you're a Muslim or you're a psychopath. I mean, that's the way these two things happen now. Which is crazy to me.
It's so sad because regardless of why I think, obviously, that everybody should have a weapon if they're qualified and they have a permit to use it. I mean, I don't want people roaming the streets if they don't know how to, like, load it or shoot it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, I think we should have weapons in this country. I think we're living in a time where it just suits you and it suits your safety and the safety of your family if you have a weapon. But my whole point is, what I don't understand, and I will never understand, is if you have a weapon, whether you know or don't know how to use it, and for whatever reason you want to end your own life, I don't understand why people want to take out all these innocent people around them. I'll never understand that.
Well, of course you won't understand it because you have to be a psychopath to understand that kind of thinking. It doesn't make any sense. That's the whole point of it. It's not normal. I mean, and, you know, a lot of people can conflate what the definition of normal is in terms of thinking, but we can definitely all agree, unless you're a psychopath, that type of thinking is not normal. And that's all it really comes down to. But then again, like I was just saying, you know, you're either a psychopath or you're Islamic fundamentalist. Those people are probably not psychopaths. They have, like, in their own minds, a legitimate reason to carry out an attack like they did in Chattanooga or, you know, however many other attacks they've done in the past couple of years. So it doesn't matter. Either you have the motivation to do it because your thought process is just that messed up based on what you believe, or you're a psychopath and you just really don't care about the life around you.
I don't know. I'm not saying
Nobody
you're wrong
knows.
in any way.
A lot of people will come out and come up with excuses for either side of this discussion, but nobody really knows because we're not them. So, I mean, that's all it really boils down to.
It just hurts my heart.
Yeah, no, it is terrible to read about.
And obviously our thoughts and prayers are definitely going with everybody at the theater, and that's just terrible. But there are acts of heroism that, you know, we're hearing about. And I always think that's one of those things that I wish we heard more about. We always hear about the shooter, like whoever the shooter is, you know, and we always hear about, you know, obviously their life, but we never hear about the acts of heroism. And I don't know. I wish we heard more happy, positive news more often.
Well, what's even worse about it to me, in my opinion, is that when it comes to the issue of people carrying their own firearms and concealing them and things like that, all these people come out and they say after an event like this, like the Chattanooga shooting or even the theater shooting, people will come out and they'll say, oh, well, you know, this group, they reenacted the entire thing, you know, with guys who may have had guns in that situation, and they still couldn't react fast enough. Like, they still couldn't have prevented it because they can't actually react to such a surprise situation fast enough. And you know what? That's not really the point. The point is that guy, you know, he took his own life. So he could have not taken his own life. I mean, he could have continued to shoot. So it's still always possible that someone there with a weapon could have actually prevented at least some suffering, at least some of the deaths.
Because for me, open carry, I think a lot of people, for me, open carry isn't about, you know, how significant of a shot you are or your aim is. Having open carry is about, can you defend yourself and you can defend other innocent people near you. I don't know. I mean, if, I don't know.
I don't even think that the whole open carry thing is that big of an... I don't see... The whole open carry thing to me is just kind of... I would never open carry a weapon. I would never... I would never just, you know, like, have a holster on my hip and just carry a weapon that way. I would keep it concealed, personally. That's just me.
Yeah.
I would never open carry it.
I would open carry.
Well, that's fine, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. I'm not saying I disagree with it.
It's just,
but my point is it's not about even open or concealed carry. It's about just having the weapon on you. And if you think about a couple of years ago when the shooter was in, I want to say it was Norway. It was one of those Scandinavian countries. Was it Norway? Or, you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-mm. There
was a shooter, and he was at like a... I want to say it was like some kind of summer camp or something like that. Anyways, this thing went on for half an hour or something. I mean, he was just going through this big, huge open area with buildings and just kind of shooting people down as they came out. And it lasted a while. And I want to say it was in Norway, but it may not be. That may not be the case. But anyways, in a situation like that, someone has time to react. Someone has time to actually come out and do something about it. And all these people who complain about, the fact that a person who has a weapon on them may not be able to react fast enough. Well, you know what? You're making the same case for the police. I mean, so what? You'd rather say, I'll sit there and wait for the police who also have a weapon to show up, as if they are more ethical or more well trained.
Oh my gosh, that's so many other stories.
Yeah,
that have happened.
that's my point. Is that and you know, don't get me wrong. There are some good cops out there. I'm not saying that they're all bad or anything like that. But the point that we are making is that there are plenty of people out there, and not just veterans, people who have trained them. I just watched a video of a little girl on Facebook who was shot in a way. I mean, she was shooting a shotgun and like a 9mm and a bunch of other weapons. And man, she totally put me to shame, put most of the people I've known in my life to shame with these weapons. You know, I mean, the point is there are people out there who are amazing with these weapons, who are trained like way beyond what most law enforcement or military people are trained to do with these weapons. So there are definitely people out there who are qualified to protect citizens just based on carrying a weapon and being out in public.
No, I agree, and a lot of it is. I mean, obviously, I'm all for it. So I'm going to say we should have it, and it should be open carry, and it should be like all out. But I also think that you know, if we're going to move to a point where hopefully, you know, every state, you know, like, you know, they were just talking about like with the Marine, you know, with the shooting with the recruiters, but hopefully every state will move to the point where, you know, if you're in the military and you know, have a permit and you're qualified for the weapon, you should carry it. I hope we move to a point that if that does happen, I hope that the budget restraints change significantly so we get more practice. I mean, as we mentioned before, I mean, I qualified, but I had a hard time zeroing, and it's just because I wasn't able to practice. As a civilian, of course, you know, I should probably have my own weapon. I should probably practice on my own, but I just hope that, you know, the laws change to where, maybe not the laws, but like the budgets change, you know. We're only going to be as good and as safe as we are for our families if we have enough practice to be.
Well, they have to eventually. I mean, they have to change to where we can actually stay trained to the standard that we should be. And things have changed a lot now. I mean, obviously, things used to be way different back in the past. You know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, things used to be way different with the budget. Everything was much more geared towards training, as it should have been, you know. But of course, back then also, the whole budget thing was free reign. And then, of course, when the war started, I remember a platoon sergeant telling me that, oh my gosh, this is it, you know, unlimited budget. It's coming. You know, we're going to get all kinds of new stuff and all that kind of stuff. We're going to have unlimited rounds. And you know what? For a while there we did. And I'm not saying that it should continue to be that way, because it certainly shouldn't be. It should be constrained to some extent.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, throw millions upon millions of dollars. I just feel like, as a reservist, in my personal experience, obviously I can't speak for other units or other brigades or companies or what have you, but I mean, for my personal experience, unfortunately for me, you know, I came from a situation where I hadn't had a weapon in a while, and I just think that's it's just not beneficial.
Well, of course it's not, but it's also, personally, I think it's not totally, you know, any soldier's fault either. It's just like I was talking about earlier. I think that it has to do with the Department of Defense and all the armed services having to comply with all this politically correct training that is being like thrust upon them right now. And it has become ridiculous. I've been in the Army now for 12 years. I joined the Army back in 2000. And here we are in 2015. I can tell you right now, the amount of briefings, the amount of ridiculous briefings, most especially, even back in 2000, everybody thinks it's a new issue now when we talk about like sexual harassment and things like that. You know what? It was an issue back in 2000. We still did briefings. We would all gather together in like the chapel or whatever. Every year, we'd have this big, huge briefing. You know, we'd have like a whole battalion of soldiers in there to get this sexual harassment. We'd have a whole day of briefings, whole day and a half of briefings. And this would happen like every 6 months or something. Now, every time I go to drill, every month we go to drill, there's something new we need to do. Some kind of new sexual harassment, some new suicide briefing, and don't get me wrong, it's not that these issues aren't important, but how disconnected is it? How completely just disingenuous is it to have these PowerPoint briefings over such deeply emotional issues. We're talking about suicide, rape, sexual harassment, sex trafficking, all this kind of stuff, drug use, whatever it is. How, just completely, in my opinion, disingenuous is it to stand up there and be like, okay, don't do A, don't do B. If you see C, call these 4 numbers and let someone know that you saw C and you need to report it to your chain of command and whatnot. You know what? These are conversations that the leadership should be having individually every month when they should be counseling their soldiers on a one-on-one basis. That's when these kind of briefings should be happening, not some person just standing up there in some indelicate way talking about such a deeply emotional issue for a lot of people. These briefings aren't helping us. In fact, they're probably driving up the number of depression, soldiers that are depressed in the Army. Just having to deal with all of these briefings. We can't retain all this information. We can't stand the boredom. We can't stand the lack of training. Because when we get to a situation overseas, when we end up deploying and we go somewhere and we have to deal with some situation, and our first response or our first instinct is to use the ACE card instead of actually doing like squad attack or some battle drill that we should have been training on, well, you know what? That's because of all this political correctness and all these crazy classes we're having to do and the training and everything. And it's, again, like I said, a complete waste of money. And I'm not trying to say that these issues aren't important, but the way the Army is approaching them is such a blunt macro instrument. It's so ineffective that people are just becoming completely desensitized to these issues. They're like, they don't even care anymore. Oh, we got another briefing. I guess I'll just sit there and let my mind wander for 2.5 hours while somebody talks to me about something incredibly important.
I know, and it's sad because the issues are important. It's just, unfortunately, the way it hits most of us it's sad. It's like worse than hip pocket, so it's sad. But if anybody ever needs any, help in any way, we're here. That's why we're here.
Yeah. You guys can definitely reach out to us for that kind of help. I think we've talked about it before on the podcast. Of course we have like a whole network of soldiers on Facebook and everywhere else that, every time some soldier posts some type of, or some veteran posts some type of comment about how they're having a hard time or anything like that, I can recall specifically somebody actually reached out to me and sent me a message and said, "Hey, have you seen this guy's post?" And myself and apparently hundreds of other people messaged him personally and just said, we're here for you. Just let us know what you need and everything. And then I actually got a message from him like a week later saying, it was amazing how many people reached out to me and I can't tell you how much I thank you and everything. And I know I think we've talked about this before. We've mentioned it before, but that's one of the cool things about having what we have now in terms of the internet and social networking and all that. We can actually use it for something good. So if you are having those kind of issues, you don't need a briefing to deal with it. You need us. You need not us specifically, Tracy and I, but you need us as in your brothers in arms.
Right. And if Wes and I aren't helpful, we can certainly do our best to find somebody that's helpful for you. And I have to mention, we haven't been here for a while, and I had an instructor in BSP, and I'm not going to mention names or anything, but he took his own life, and it broke my heart because, he was a transgender, and the Air Force, has a policy where he couldn't be in anymore, and I don't know, he was one of the best instructors I've ever had in my life. And I don't even mean necessarily he was a great military instructor. I mean, he was just a great teacher, a great coach, great friend. And he took his own life. And it took me, and I know quite a few people, just by complete shock. We were blindsided. And I felt horrible. And I felt like I wish we could have done more. I mean, me as a group, or me as an individual and then me as a group, I felt like we could have done more. And even though, going to like all these classes and all these PowerPoints and drill and even active duty, I know it was annoying, but I mean, gosh, if we're not here for each other, then what are we here for? So definitely, I wish somehow I could go back in time and made a difference for this individual. I wish he could have known, how many people were really upset. I don't know. I'm probably rambling, but I just wanted to mention it because, of course, it's been on my mind, as you know, since it happened.
Well, no, and it's true. And you're not always going to be able to make a difference, but just the fact that, we reach out to each other and we take care of each other like brothers and sisters is what's important about these types of situations. Everything that the Army teaches you, all these briefings and these talks that they have and everything, none of it matters more than us just taking care of one another. That's what matters the most. The fact that we can reach out to each other and we don't even have to have served together. The fact that we could be in completely separate units. We could be in completely different branches of service. But you know what? We can always reach out to each other. And we can always talk to each other about these issues because chances are, even though every person's experience could be slightly different or completely different, it doesn't matter. We can all reach out to each other and talk to this because we all know that we have that sense of community with one another, that sense of family. That's what matters more than anything, is just reaching out to each other. So if you need to reach out to someone, it doesn't matter who they are. I guarantee you, if they're a veteran, they're not going to say, "Get the hell away from me, I don't want to talk to you." They're going to say, "Tell me what's going on. How can I help?" So reach out to anyone around you that you know that's a veteran. If you need that kind of help, then reach out to them. Reach out to us, whoever you need to.
I agree. And then, this particular individual, was one of those people that, oh my God, he would have so given you the shirt off his back. He was one of those people. If you were sad, he would do his best to cheer you up. And, and I'm sure people that are really close to him, right before this happened, people would say, "Hey, are you okay?" And I'm sure he would say yes. And all I have to say is, people's behavior and what people are like. And if they're giving you the quick yes, probe more, because that probing more may actually be hugely significant. And I don't know, he impacted my life incredibly, and I still miss him to this day. And I just think it's worth just mentioning that, even though I agree, because I spent the 3.5 days with the ridiculous training, sometimes it is ridiculous, but the message is pure. So we're here if you need anything.
Yeah, so on that, why don't we take a quick break and then we'll come back and continue this. For part 2 of our newly formatted podcast.
Yeah, so on a more positive note, this story didn't start positive, and I think anybody who knows us knows that we're dog lovers, and of course, we've rescued our 2 dogs and cats that we've had before. And anyway, Caitlin, not Caitlyn Jenner, but Caitlin the dog, has been near and dear to my heart, and so and ever since I saw this first story about her. But she's the dog, and of course everybody can Google. She's the dog, that beautiful terrier. She had her mouth taped shut, her muzzle taped shut, and they believe it was taped shut for 2 days, so tight that she couldn't she couldn't cool herself down, she couldn't pant, she couldn't have any water, any food. And she was sold for $10 or $20 or something. And the person that bought her, in my opinion, was a despicable person. And she apparently was barking a lot. So instead of being, in my opinion, a decent, not even great, but a decent dog owner, decided to just tape her muzzle shut. He supposedly taped it 9 times around her muzzle, so tight that, she has since lost part of her tongue, and she's had all sorts of surgeries. And I'm happy to say that now she's really happy, if you hadn't been following the story. But what's great about her is she's gone through all these horrible, she was found after 2 days, right? She's gone through all these painful surgeries, and a lot of people have been, rallying for her and sharing her photos, and she had a Facebook page for a while and what have you. But she's on her way to actually becoming one of those dogs that is going to be helping other people. So I think that is so awesome, because she was on People Magazine already. I mean, I don't know. I just love the fact that a person, or unfortunately a poor innocent dog, in my opinion, is brutalized so much. I just love the fact that their story can help shed light on other stories. I don't know. I just love that. I just wanted to mention Caitlin because I'm obsessed with Caitlin. Every time I see her on Facebook, I like stop what I'm doing. I'm like obsessed with Caitlin.
Well, and it's awesome too that people are using Facebook to spread this kind of stuff because, I mean, you know, a situation like this would have never, you know, received any type of attention in the past. And it actually, as soon as this whole thing started and you started reposting it and I started reading a little more about it, it really reminded me of, and now thinking about it, you actually sent me a picture about it earlier, I think today or yesterday. But it reminds me of our own little experience we had where there was this dog in the apartment complex we were living in. Yes. And, and this poor little guy was just sitting back on the back porch.
And it was a tiny, tiny back porch. It was what, 2x2? It was really small.
It was incredibly small. Not 2x2. It was a little bigger than that, but it was still way too small for a 30 to 40 pound dog. And this poor guy had obviously never had any type of human interaction whatsoever. And when we actually walked up to it, we noticed on the back porch, I mean, this poor thing was actually like living in its own feces and urine. And it had this huge knot on its head that was obviously infected. It looked literally like somebody hit him with like a frying pan or something. Yeah. And it was all infected and pussy and nasty. And we spoke to the apartment about it, and they didn't do anything. They even sent the police. Yeah, the police came out, and they basically said, well, you know, they're not doing anything as far as breaking the law. This was in Texas.
And what killed me was they were like, okay, ma'am, the dog has food and water. We can't do anything else.
Right, so they're not technically breaking the law, or there's nothing we can do about it. Yeah. So we essentially were prepared to just steal him.
We were. Do you remember? Remember your cousin was with us, and I was like, "Come on, we can do it."
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. And we eventually just knocked on the door and we told them, you know, obviously you guys don't want the dog. You know, we'll take them off your hands, and you don't, you know, so you don't have to deal with them anymore. And these shitty people, they were like, "Oh yeah, we got him as a puppy, but he just got too big."
And do you remember what they said? You can have the dog. I mean, we paid $100 for him, but I guess you could have him. Yeah. I will never forget that as long as I live. I was so angry. Yeah. So, anyways, we put it out there that we had this dog and we kept him in our apartment for a day,
maybe like 2 days or something. Yeah. I don't know. I even slept on the couch, so that he could sleep next to me on the floor, and we had our dog and cat in the room with Tracy. Mm-hmm. And we ended up kind of putting it on Facebook and everything. And surprisingly, an old friend of mine that I served with at Fort Campbell, who happened to live in San Antonio, reached out to us, and they came and picked up this dog, and his name's Tripwire now, and he's doing awesome, and he looks all healthy and everything. Yes. So I have to say that situation for me was something that actually really changed my whole perspective and taking a more personal approach to helping animals like that, you know, because there's just no reason for it. There's no reason for a person to purchase a dog or to even just, you know, adopt a dog and then just let them suffer on their back porch because, I didn't think they were going to get that big. What the hell is that? I mean, it's like having a child and saying, oh my God, I didn't know they were going to become a teenager eventually. and just giving them away to somebody. What the, you know, I don't understand it. But it's awesome to see the progress that everything's going on with Caitlin.
And I agree, obviously, because of course, you know, I'm like a big animal sucker. But I'm always signing every petition because I'm like, oh my God, love, there's this whale somewhere. I'm always obsessed with trying to help if I can. But more importantly is social media, to me, gets really old and gets really boring. And there's days when I'm like, oh, I wish I could step away from social media. Just because at least at this time frame, at least on my feeds, everybody seems very negative. But it can. I mean, it has the capacity to do good. So I don't know. This is just a great way for it to help, I think.
I agree, but also there are things about it too that they just drive me insane. And I was actually just earlier I was looking through Facebook and I saw a post and some woman, she posted a picture and it was a dead doe with an infant fawn next to the dead mother deer.
I saw that a couple days ago. I was so sad.
It is sad, but you know what? It's not but she posted it like hunters are going out and killing the mother, and the fawn has no one to go to. And you know what? That's absolutely not true at all. Hunters do not look at it that way. No hunter is hunting while deers are mating. That happens in like May and June and everything. And the whole point of the hunting season is so that a fawn can actually be born and become, come into its own and then be independent by the time the hunting season comes around. And even then, most does are not, they do not qualify to be hunted. They still have to meet like certain requirements.
I know, but there's a-holes who will do it anyway.
Of course, there's
That's
poachers.
The disturbing thing.
Yeah, there's poachers
like the
out
poor
there.
Elephants,
but the laws don't stop the poachers. So I mean, saying that hunting is bad and outlawing hunting altogether is still not going to stop the poachers. The point is that still happens regardless of whatever laws are passed or created. And it doesn't mean that hunters are like horrible people because they kill for their food. And most of these people who complain about hunting, they go to, I mean, come on. You are a vegetarian for a year and a vegan for a month just because you saw some slaughterhouse video, right? So you see what happens with processed meat. So if you feel that way in any way whatsoever, you have any kind of inclination to, feel disgusted by what happens in the processing of meat, then you have to try, at least in my opinion, to respect a hunter as a person who goes out and actually does it in the quickest possible, most humane way that can be done.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. If you're going to hunt or fish, because you and I have had this conversation many times about fish. If you're going to hunt or fish, in my opinion, be humane about it. I mean, use the meat to somewhat. Don't just don't just hunt something or fish something and just let it rot. I have a problem with that because I feel like you're just wasting that life. I don't know. He's laughing because I have this problem with fish. Anyway.
No, let's get into this. Hold on. This was awesome because one day I actually came home and I told Tracy that, hey, I brought home some live fish from the market, and she was in the bathtub or something. She couldn't actually see anything, and I actually filled the sink with water and started like splashing it around. And I was like, you're gonna cook these and you're gonna clean these and eat and cook them, right? So we can eat them later. And I can't tell you how bent out of shape she was over the fact that she thought I had live fish in the sink that she was going to have to kill. And she was like, they're big eyes.
Like whenever we go to a restaurant, who hasn't gone to a restaurant and see the live lobster in the tank? I can't make eye contact with the lobster. I just can't do it because I want to cry. I don't know. I can't make eye contact. I am probably one of the biggest carnivores you've probably ever met in your life, right? Every meal could just be pure meat, but I can't see the eyes.
It's true. This is a woman that went vegetarian for a year, and of that year, she went vegan for a month. And then as soon as the year was over, she went full on, completely
I ate like
Tyrannosaurus
animals.
Rex.
I got so sick. My stomach.
Yeah. What was it? What was it? You told me you saved so many animals by being a vegetarian for a year, and then you basically ate the same amount of animals in one day.
I'm so not kidding. It was. Oh my god! If I could remember the name of the book right now, I would share it with you. But I can't remember the name of the book. Maybe if I remember it later, we could share it in the link. But anyway, I read a book, and the book directed me to a slaughterhouse video, and of course they're all horrific. And this video and this book speculated that if like an average American would go 90 days without eating any kind of meat, then they would save 90 animals. Well, when my year was concluded, and I was like lifting and everything, it was like terrible. I mean, I was like so weak. Anyway, like when my year concluded, I ate like 90 animals. I was so sick though afterwards. Anyway.
Which I think is awesome.
So basically, I didn't help at all, really.
But so what? I mean, I can totally respect a vegetarian or a vegan who comes to me and says, I'm a vegetarian or I'm a vegan for these ethical reasons. Like, I just feel like, we shouldn't eat animals because they are essentially sort of part of our ancestry and all that, evolution. I'm okay with that. I can totally respect that. I don't agree with it, but I can respect that. But as soon as a vegetarian or a vegan comes to me and says, this is the more healthy lifestyle, you know what? Get the hell away from me. You have no idea what you're talking about. If that were the more healthy lifestyle, then that's just naturally what humans would be in the first place. So there's absolutely no scientific evidence whatsoever to support your claim. So I just don't, I can't respect that at all. But if someone wants to tell me that they feel that way because they care about animals that much, well, I'm okay with that. I can agree with it. I can agree with the fact that they feel that way. I just don't feel that way. So, I mean, it is what it is. Personally, I think that if you're going to take that position, you have to actually come up with some kind of justification for the reason that animals eat other animals. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. And obviously, it's just the most healthy way for us to eat.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm like a huge steak lover. Anybody who knows me, that's like one of the first things I will always pick on a menu. But my concern has always just been the way that they're treated until they make it to me in a grocery store.
Sure, absolutely. And I agree with that. I mean, and, there's, of course, a huge controversy that revolves around it. And, of course, that revolves around, like, GMOs and all that kind of stuff. I mean, even though science kind of tells us that genetically modified organisms don't really have any health effects to us as far as we know. I mean, science tells us that. But still, when we think about eating organic and stuff like that, the whole organic thing, even though it mostly when people are talking about organic versus GMOs, they're talking about pesticides and things like that, but it still also has to do with treatment of animals. I think I actually got into a debate one time with someone on Facebook or whatever about raw milk. Yeah. We were talking about raw milk, and they were talking about they were talking about how important pasteurizing milk is and everything. And I was trying to make the point that, well, because raw milk is illegal, which is amazingly ridiculous.
It has to do with money, obviously.
Well, yeah, but, from a scientific perspective, it has more to do with the environment that the animal is raised in. So the reason we have to pasteurize milk is because these animals are raised in such horrific, bacteria-infested environments. Whereas when you get organic raw milk or organic anything, organic butter, all that kind of stuff, it's because they're raised in open pastures, grass-fed, all that kind of stuff. That's what organic means in that sense of of that particular context. So other than that, though, I mean, I don't know. The science says that like GMOs and everything are okay, but who really knows? I guess.
Well, I think I've had this conversation on a podcast before. Obviously, I know certainly we've had it, like as a couple, but every single time, because I'm a reservist, right? So every single time that I put on a uniform, I eat like the worst. And a lot of it has to just do because I don't want an MRE. So I'll do whatever is possible to not eat an MRE. But aside from that,
a person surviving in the apocalypse will do whatever possible to.
No, I agree. But I just came back from this mission of 30 days, and I didn't eat a single MRE, and I was so proud and so happy.
That's a huge triumph.
Yes, it was a big effing deal. But anyway, oh my God, I lost my train of thought. I was just talking about just like food, and every single time I'm like in a uniform, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the time restraints that we have or what have you, but we're up so early, we're usually back so late, but I always eat terribly, and I don't know. I was.
It's because it's a comfort food. It's because it's just like after you just had a huge breakup in your life, when you put on that uniform, you've essentially broken up with like freedom and liberty and everything that you love in life.
So terrible.
So you're trying to do whatever. You're basically that girl with the bucket of ice cream going, like sitting there with your spooning the ice cream into your mouth, feeling sorry for yourself. That's
the big spoon. It's not even exactly. It's right. Like the ladle.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. That's what it boils down to. And you sit there and you convince yourself, well, I'm super busy. I don't have time to sit down and have this shitty chow hall meal. I don't have time for that. All right, I gotta sit down. I gotta have this protein bar and this Twix bar, and then maybe a bag of Lay's or something out of the snack.
No,
Pringles. Sorry. That's all I got time for right now. I got to do that. Besides, I'm going to be running 4 miles in the morning anyways. I just run that shit off. That's what it is.
Well, all that to say, not that I do not disagree, but all that to say, I mean, I don't know. I got in a conversation last weekend, the weekend before, I don't know, whenever I was at Fort Bragg, I got in a conversation about how, obviously I'm older, right? I'm going to be 44 in November, by the way, which is crazy. But we got in a conversation about McDonald's, and I was saying, I was like a 70s kid. Like when I would go to McDonald's with my mom, because my mom worked full time, so it was like a big deal. She didn't, she wasn't able to make us breakfast every single day. She did a lot, but not every day. So a lot of times on the way to school, she would go to work, and we would stop by McDonald's on the way. But my whole point of, at almost 44, I'm still pretty darn healthy, and I think a big part of that is because in the 70s and part of the 80s, McDonald's used to serve food, like real food, and they just don't anymore. I don't know when it changed to when those burgers are just not meat. I don't know when that changed. I don't know. It was just interesting to me. Just going back to the GMOs, I just thought about McDonald's, and I was just like, I don't know when that changed. And I remember growing up as the 70 kids, we would get, what is it, that like 2-liter bottle of Coke, whatever that is. We would, as a family of 4, well 3, but 4, whatever, that bottle of Coke, when my mom would buy it, like on the weekend, it would last like 7 days. And that's what the average person eats now every single day, or drinks every single day. It just blows me away. I don't know exactly when the portion size changed and the GMOs changed. I don't know. I just think it's fascinating because in my lifetime, I have seen significant changes.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't, first of all, with the whole GMO thing, I mean, you can't deny that it's helped people across the world because places, if you think about the old, oh my gosh, like the Thomas Malthus thing, right? When they talk about how there's no possible way where we could possibly produce enough food for the population as it continues to grow, right? So if you and your husband own an acre of land, right, and then you have 2 kids, then you have that acre to feed 4 people, and then, then they have 2 kids, so then you have that acre to feed whatever it is, 12 people, and so on and so forth. Well, stuff like GMOs has actually helped us to produce more food, just bigger quantities in a shorter amount of time. So, I mean, it's not that it hasn't helped, and especially like countries like that are starving, like continents like Africa and whatnot that are starving, it's definitely helped us. But I think what you're talking about when you're talking about like the Coke and, first of all, just the Coke. Let's talk about
what is the hamburger patty though at McDonald's? Well,
no. First, let's talk about the 2-liter of Coke you're talking about, right? So that, in my opinion, that is a totally just us being completely effing lazy. That's what that is. We drink more Coke. We do whatever is the most convenient. And of course, we hate water because it tastes terrible. It tastes like water. so nobody drinks water, So of course they're gonna lean to these stuff, all these different drinks like Coke and stuff like that. So in my opinion, it's not a surprise to me that we drink more Coke now. Coke was invented, it's just like cars. I mean, cars were invented. Not everybody drove a car at first, and if they did, it was probably very rare because it was expensive to drive a car, or there weren't very, very many places to drive a car. Now we can drive a car anywhere for way less money, so of course a lot more people drive cars. So Coke is the same way to me, in my opinion. It's just developed to that point to where it's incredibly accessible to us, and it just tastes way better than water. But as far as the other, what were you talking about? The McDonald's thing. As far as the McDonald's thing goes, yeah, I know that there for a while their stuff became less meat, like you're saying, and it's probably because they found out that, I'm willing to bet that at the beginning it started out as like an all beef patty kind of thing, like most places, how they used to be in the past, and then they started to find out, well, we can actually add more than just the meat, and it doesn't really affect
these crappy fillers the way the meat. That nobody knows what the F is in the filler.
Wait, I'm just saying, it's not filler. In my opinion, it's still more of the animal. It's just like stuff that we wouldn't normally, like if you went hunting and you killed a deer, you wouldn't cut out like ligament and add it into the meat just for filler. That's kind of what's happening in the processing, in my opinion, is that we're adding in like all these other parts of the animal that we wouldn't typically eat, like intestines and things like that. It's just that these companies have found out that it's just they can produce way more meat by doing that. But in my opinion, everybody's saying, "Oh, they're all horrible for doing this and everything," and that's right, they are. But I'm saying that the market is working the way it should because people are discovering that this is happening, and they're coming out and saying, "Well, this is terrible. You know what? This is not what beef is. Beef should be these types of meat. It should be like shoulder, ribs, thighs, whatever it is. It shouldn't include like ligaments and tendons and things like that are being added into it." And you know what? To their credit, McDonald's and all these other companies are responding. They are responding, and they're changing the way that they do things. I mean, when was the last time you actually took a tour through a warehouse? Which it's Tyson. Tyson is the one that does like their chicken and stuff.
So you're gonna make me cry with Tyson.
I'm just saying.
Because of all the slaughterhouse videos, you're gonna make me cry.
I'm just saying that. How do you know that it's still going that horrible? Because people are complaining about the quality of their meat, so they have to respond. Even if their meat becomes more expensive, if people are complaining that much, they're going to respond and they're going to do better about it because they have to, because people will stop buying they had a huge drop in sales because of everything that went on with their, with the whole controversy.
Well,
so
I know. I think one of the biggest problems, and of course I agree with you, but one of the biggest problems is just that, like, if you go to a fast food place and you want like a salad or you want like grilled chicken, it's going to be impossible to find, or it's going to be 4 times more as expensive as like a crappy burger with God knows what kind of filler. And I just hate that. I hate that vegetables are so expensive and crappy food is so cheap. I just hate that.
Well, but that's also too, the vegetables being more expensive is part of the organic movement, because so many people are complaining about GMOs, which all the GMO thing is, people think that it's just about like making vegetables bigger or whatever, but that's not actually the case. That's not the case.
That just makes me laugh.
GMOs have to do with what they have to do with is farmers being able to use certain pesticides to kill off pests and weeds and stuff like that, but because they're genetically modified, these vegetables are able to fight off the pesticide. So the pesticide doesn't actually kill the vegetable. But because so many are complaining about this process and they want more organic stuff, which, I'm okay with, but the more organic stuff is going to be harder to grow because then you're not using pesticides. You're not using all that stuff to kill off insects and everything, so it becomes way more expensive to produce it. So of course it's going to be more expensive, it's just the way. I mean, if people are going to go in that direction and they're, if you want your stuff to be all natural and you don't want us to use modern technology to kill off pests and insects and weeds and things like that, then what can you do? I mean, it's going to be more expensive to do it. If you're not willing to give in to technology, then you're just going to have to pay more money to get the more natural stuff that you want. So, I mean, it's a wash. I mean, that's all you can do. You can either pay more money or you can accept what we have.
And I, of course, don't want to accept that.
Wait. You don't want to pay more money, or you don't want to accept that that's...
I just don't want to pay more money. I want good, healthy, clean people. I want that too. But I want like good, healthy, clean food that is inexpensive for the majority of people in America is what I want. I understand that is probably unrealistic, but that's what I want. I would love families, that struggle financially for whatever reason. I would just love families that struggle financially for whatever reason to be able to go to some fast food place and purchase a good, healthy, clean meal for their children. That's just what I want.
Well, I agree, but I don't agree with you saying that it needs to be like natural, healthy food. I think that most of our processes that we use now to create food are healthy and pretty natural. I don't think that they're as bad as most people seem to think they are. But I think it is something that we're working towards, and when it comes down to it, I don't think that putting, like the government forcing people to put like the calories and all that stuff on labels isn't going to change anything.
But it's helpful because some people.
I'm not saying it's
do not have any idea.
I'm not saying it's not helpful, and I'm not saying that companies aren't deceiving about stuff like the whole Nutella thing.
Wow.
I'm not.
Hey,
don't start defending Nutella now. All right, because they were the ones that were like the big.
I know. But Nutella is delicious. But I agree.
My point is, is that these things will continue to evolve and get better, and it won't come from the government trying to tell people or people trying to tell other people how to do things. It's just going to come from these companies producing. Look, if they start producing something, if they start creating like a vegetable or a meat or whatever that starts hurting or harming people, or that we find out becomes unhealthy, then it's not going to be good for business. So it's not in their interest to actually do that. It's in their interest to create the best possible product they can on the widest possible scale they can in the cheapest possible way they can, which brings it to us as the healthiest, cheapest option that they can come up with. And they're continuing to strive to do that. And I'm not saying they won't make mistakes along the way. Of course they do. I mean, shit gets fucked up all the time, man. So there's no way we can say that it's going to be perfect, but we can't totally just say, oh, well, they're evil corporations who are blah 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 blah. I can't accept that. They're doing what they can with what they have, and especially under the constraints that they're put under by public pressure. So I mean.
No, I agree.
It is what it is.
I agree. It's similar to dog food, and that's starting to change. I mean, as far as like what's actually in the dog food, and you and I pay a little bit more, right, to get what we think is better quality dog food. It's similar. I understand.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll just be rich one day, and we can just start cooking them steaks with us and all that kind of stuff. So
I know, but whenever you cook a steak for them, what do?
What do you mean?
Sweet pea and whiskey. Whenever you cook a steak for them, they just still look at you like you still haven't fed me in weeks.
Like I only gave them one steak.
Yeah, I know. Anyway,
where's my secondsies?
I know. They're both doing very well, by the way. Specifically Pea, because I know a few people have asked about her. She still has like her heart problems, but she's doing really well. So we're very grateful. So
we're up on an hour now. So we'll go ahead and close this thing up, but. Just to let you guys know, we really appreciate. A lot of people have still been like commenting and liking and like visiting our website and checking up on us and trying to figure out when we're going to continue to do this. So I apologize.
And I know people are still going to iTunes and Stitcher. I know they are. So I definitely thank all of you.
They have been, and we've still been getting downloads. I mean, we only have 11 episodes, and we've still been getting downloads. So it's been awesome. So we really appreciate you guys with your patience and waiting for us to actually start doing this again. And we kind of hope that you sort of enjoy a little bit more of this, I don't know, kind of us more just kind of BSing with you. And we would actually love to hear from you guys and what you think about the different things that we've talked about. If you have any kind of input, we'll read your emails on the next podcast. We'll talk about them. We'd love to hear from you guys. We hear from you a lot on like Facebook and stuff like that, So if you want to email us or just you want to focus on Facebook and just send us messages that way, or Twitter or whatever, you definitely can. You can just go to vetscafe.com and email us there, or you can go to our Facebook page, Veterans Cafe Podcast, and you can get in touch with us there. Just let us know what you think. Again, we're sorry it took so long, but we're definitely glad to be back, and we'll try and make sure we keep this thing going on a weekly basis again.
At least closer to weekly.
We still have crazy scheduled stuff going on coming up, but we'll still try and do the best we can, even if we can't do a weekly thing. And we'll start maybe even trying to put 2 out in a week if we know we're not going to be able to do one the next week or something like that. We'll see if we can try and figure it out. So, but regardless, we appreciate you guys sticking with us and still visiting the page and visiting the Facebook page and everything, and keeping track with what's been going on with us. So,
and if you need any help with anything, definitely feel free to reach out.
Yeah, again, you can email us. Like I said, you can email us at themax@vetscafe.com, or you can go on our Facebook page or Twitter. We're on all that stuff. So definitely reach out to us if you need to. Okay. So thanks for listening to another episode of the Veterans Cafe Podcast. I'm Wes.
I'm Tracy.
And we'll talk to you next time.